Yeah, we're live. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I'm thinking that I have a microphone going here. It shows that I do. So hopefully everything's working. First of all, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. I had a great day. Got to do a bunch of stuff with my family today. It was awesome. We went to see the new movie Maverick, which was excellent, even better than the original one. I thought that they did a really good job. So it was. I didn't go in expecting a lot, but as it turned out, it was fantastic. So now I want to take my kids to see it because my wife and I just went. We were going to try to take my father, but unfortunately, that didn't work out. But we got to go see it, so it was kind of cool. And now I want to take my kids because I think that they'll really like it. They don't even have to understand what the other one was. It's not really necessary. It has all the things that you want when you go see a movie, so that's kind of cool. But this isn't a movie review. Again, happy Father's Day. And today we're going to talk about the decision that you have to make that all of us, well, at some time, the guys that are doing performance stuff have to make. And it's this. So if you have whatever kind of car you have, whatever kind of thing you're trying to hop up, the turbo diesel Nova, which is awesome, which is a good example of, okay, should you, whatever motor you have in there or whatever you have in your, let's say you have a V6 Camaro or you have an Iron Duke powered Camaro, or you have any sort of import, a B16 or and then the Honda is another good example. Let's say you have a D series Honda, and should you step up to a LS VTEC or a B16 swap or some kind of VTEC swap? Should you take your 350Z or 300ZX or 280ZX or any of the ZX or Z models? Should you upgrade the motor that you have in it? Should you, do things that we would do, ported heads, cams, in that case of the 6-cylinder side drafts and or turbo? Should you do that? Or at what point would you consider swapping something else in? So if you have maybe you've got a 455 powered Skylark or something, or I've recently I have a 400 Pontiac that I'm going to do a video on, and I'm going to take it down and dyno test it. If you have a 326 or a 350 cubic inch Pontiac in a Firebird or some other full-size Pontiac, at what point would you start modifying that, and or especially if you're thinking about adding boost to it? At what point would you think, you know what, it's going to, and is also, it's very important, is this the train of thought that you would have? This is going to cost me more to do the upgrades on the existing motor that I have, which is often the case when we have a motor that doesn't share the enthusiasm and the market coverage that like an LS or small block Chevy, small block Ford, or lots of other motors do have, umpteen different cylinder heads and a million camshafts and a various different kinds of turbo kits and, intake manifolds and all kinds of stuff for you to choose from so that you can put a combination together that just takes all the power away. Actually, it's fairly easy to make power with lots of these combinations. But there are a lot of things out there that don't have 10 or 15 cylinder heads available for them. They've got one or two or just stock stuff that you have to port. They don't have lots of camshafts. They don't have, turbos are always an option. And that's a good thing about boost. And I was going to ask whether or not you guys thought boost was a turbo was the ultimate bolt-on power adder. And I think it kind of is. But you can always do that with whatever you have. Any motor that you have, you can have a flathead, you can have a 460 Ford, modular Ford, any of the Ford varieties, any of the Chevys, and any sort of import, whatever you have, even if the market hasn't embraced it the way that you have, you always have boost. You can hook a turbo up, and as long as you can get the right air and air-fuel ratio, and injectors are usually a fairly easy thing to get. It gets more difficult when you're talking about direct injected motors. Fueling becomes more of a problem with those. But almost any of these other motors, you can, as long as you can tune them and get the right amount of fuel and get the right timing with it, usually boost is a good option to what you have. So the question becomes, should you do that? Should you modify it? And maybe this is more a question of less common versions of super other guys' motors, where the market coverage isn't nearly as extensive. But you could always do boost. And on some of these things, you have to do reground cams and things like with the 4200 Atlas is a perfect example. Good motor, has lots of potential. Calvin has shown that many times. He's already out knocking off 9-second runs with it. So there's lots of potential. The thing is, you have to have, you know, reground cams instead of having 20 or 30 different sets of camshafts to choose from. So at what point do you like going down the rabbit hole with your existing combination and improving what's there? For me, a lot of times I do like that, because I'm all about being other guys. I like the other guys' stuff. I like when that guy keeps an AMC motor in there and makes the AMC work, especially if he makes it work very well, which is possible with almost any kind of combination. So if you take a motor and if you have to have a camshaft ground for it, you have a camshaft ground. You can always port the existing heads if there are no aftermarket heads for them. We're lucky in that most of the domestic stuff, Ford, Chevy, Dodge, even AMC, there's Buick, Pontiac, there's usually something available that will, in terms of cylinder heads, that will definitely, you know, and sometimes dramatically so, improve the head flow and give us the potential to make lots of power. Camshafts are usually not too hard of a thing. So I think for me, it's kind of cool to be able to say, if you go out and do something impressive with it, you run 12s or 11s or 10s or 9s or 8s or whatever you do, or you go really fast, you go 200 in the standing mile. Rich, I'll take a second and answer your question. Big fan here. Love your video intros. I have a motorhome 440 that's been beefed up, original heads, Edelbrock EFI. Any advice on how to gain 50 more horsepower? Do you have a good camshaft in it? And if you have the original heads and you don't have them ported, those heads, any sort of factory 440 head is definitely restrictive. I mean, they really are kind of more toward the small block end of airflow than they are of big block airflow. So stock heads will definitely be holding them back. Really good ported versions, like something that Dulcich might do, or Vizard or somebody, one of these guys, can help a lot. But ported aftermarket heads will go a long way to making more power. And then obviously, as we showed, even running just like 6 or 7 pounds of boost on any of these Mopars like a 440, you can make a lot more power. But back to our discussion. So at what point do you think, are you like all in on, okay, I want to just upgrade the thing that I have because I want a Dare to be different. I want if this thing goes out and is a 200-mile-an-hour car and they go, oh, that's really cool, it must be LS swap. And you go, oh no, it is the factory, whatever that next comment is the factory B series Honda, or the factory, 13B rotary, or it's a 2J, they would kind of expect that, or an RB, but an L series Nissan or whatever it is, because then it just makes the achievement that much cooler. And in my opinion, opening the hood, while I love opening the hood and seeing an LS swapped in there, especially one that has boost on it, because they look good and obviously they can make a cajillion like horsepower, but it's just as good and sometimes even more so seeing something different in there. Somebody put instead of swapping in an LS, maybe they put an LT1, a Gen 2 LT1 in there. If I would be, and I was looking through lots of the videos, I would be every bit as excited at seeing a turbocharged Iron Duke motor that only made 150 horsepower as I would seeing an LS making 1,050 horsepower. Because it's just different and it's cool and you don't see it nearly as much, and the guy's going to have to go to more of an effort. Like I've been watching videos recently on lots of weird stuff like that. I got guys making draw-through turbo systems for various things, and it's one of the things that I want to do on the L Series Nissan, because back in the day, anyone that's familiar with those motors, Crown used to make a turbo kit for the 240 and 260 stuff. And basically, it was just a turbo on the stock exhaust manifold, and then you remove the SU carburetors, and then they have it is almost just a straight piece of pipe with 2 outlets, one going to each one of the 2 manifolds that the L Series 240 had on it. You use one SU carburetor in front of it. Now, obviously, I don't think it can feed very much with a single SU, so if you put a bigger one on there, it would be better. But it's something I want to try. Like I want to try duplicating that in not totally, because I don't need to make it exactly like that on the dyno. I could just make it be, it's something that I can weld together and make a log deal. And I can get together with Oliver, and he has the manifolds and stuff for these earlier cars also, so I can borrow those and run them that way. And I want to run some draw through stuff, even if I don't have carbon seals in them. I just want to running draw through stuff on the engine dyno for a few runs or whatever. I don't think it's going to hurt the turbo, so I want to run some of those things, and maybe we'll try it with an SU and see what happens, as long as I can get some fuel enrichment to it. And if I have to, I'll put a Holly on there, put a Holly 2-barrel on there, a little Holly 4-barrel or something on there with an adapter, and make it work, as long as we get enough fuel in there and kind of see what happens. And it'll be cool to see what, because guys like seeing that draw through stuff. And there's no intercooler, obviously. It's just drawing the fuel in through the turbo and then blowing the the fueled up boost into it's not, the only reason that it's not flat is because where the discharge goes from the turbo to the middle in between the two turbos, that point, because of the packaging with the turbo, had to be past the beginning of the flange for the intake manifolds. So basically the straight pipe has a little bit of a bend in it right there, but it's just flat, dead-headed, and has to loop itself back around and find its way into whatever cylinder it's going into. So again, maybe distribution's a problem with that. I don't know, but draw through stuff is kind of cool, and I want to try some more of that. And like I said, I've also got that Pontiac 400 that I'm going to run for a friend of our family's, somebody that my son played soccer with, and I'm trying to help her out. And so that will be cool, because I haven't ever run a Pontiac myself. I was only there when the guys at West Tech were running a 455, and I just did a video on that. But it's cool, because a Pontiac needs some love too. And I've never put one together, so I'm going to do a little bit of work on this one and make sure that it's right, and it's actually going in a 69 GTO. So the other thing I have is I have some things that she's trying to sell. I'll be posting those if anybody's interested in a Muncie 4-speed trans. It's an M20, so the fine spline. It has the shift linkage. It has pedals. It has the stuff that you would need to convert a. This was going in a 69 GTO, so it has stuff that you'd need to convert a manual or an automatic trans car into a manual. So it's got a bunch of stuff. So let me know if anybody's interested. There's a couple of sets of 6X heads. Both the I think that they're 3s and 4s, and the Pontiac guys will know what that is. What else do they have? There's a block, and there's some pistons and rods, which are stock ones. I don't know what kind of condition they're in, but the transmission is really kind of the big thing. I may do something with the block, put together another motor, maybe so she has a spare or something. But we'll see how all that works out. But all of that is going to be available. I think I need to get a poll up here going. So. Is boosting what you have better than is boosting the engine you already have better than an engine swap? So let's see what people think. LQ4 reman swap into an 03 RCSB 4.8 or turbo the 4.8. So, a turbo 4.8 is going to be a lot more powerful than a stock 6-liter is by leaps and bounds. Any kind of turbo 4.8, especially if you have a cam in the 4.8 and then you add boost to it, it would be way better than a naturally aspirated LQ4. If you're going to turbocharge the 6-liter, then that's even better. I'm waiting to swap a Vortec 4200 in my S10. Yeah, I think Calvin's convinced a lot of people that the 4200 is kind of a good way to go. And that's what happens. That's why we do these tests. It's not that Calvin thinks that the 4200 is the best motor in the world, I'm sure, because he has LS powered stuff also. But it's when somebody does a test and we see the success that they have in the testing that they're doing, we see the potential and go, oh yeah, that is kind of cool. And that's what I like about this other guy's stuff. And the 4200, that Atlas, and its 5-cylinder and 4-cylinder like brethren are also even more other guys' stuff. 6-liter stock gap rings, 2 GT35s, sloppy stage 2, 243 heads. A-team intake. What's an A-team intake? I don't know what that is. 102 millimeter throttle body. The what do you think horsepower wise? The 35s will support more than if they're 3582s, they'll support 1,000 horsepower or better. So your combination could make that much if you turn it all the way up. Better for longevity on engines, turbo or supercharger. With either one of them, if the tune is right, longevity. Very few people own the engine before long enough that the engine actually just wears out on them because they put a turbo or supercharger on there. Cam that goes with an EFI system. There are any sort of camshaft you can run with EFI. It doesn't matter. You can run a carbureted cam, a nitrous cam, blower cam, all of that stuff will work. What EFI cams tend to be, Rich, is, and I'm sorry, I'm getting back to your thing. What they tend to be is something that has a little bit wider LSA, only because the idle quality, whether it's carbureted or fuel injected, and I don't know why they designate that with a carburetor, but the idle quality tends to be better with a slightly wider LSA, like 112, 13, 14 in that range, than it does with 106 or 107 or 108. Even 110 gets choppy before it does with those wider LSAs. So anything like that. Like I put a 6-cylinder Atlas in my Scout. I think that the 6-cylinder Atlas would have also been a good application for the Nova too. Although I'm tickled pink that he put that turbo diesel in there. A-team is a sheet metal intake. Is it like the Sniper intake, the fabricated one that everybody sells? If it is, it's not. It's going to lose power down low compared to the long rudder stuff. But for you on a 6-liter, you're not going to have to worry about that too much, because you're with 2 GT35s and a 6-liter, you're going to have an overabundance of torque anyways. Iron Duke is like riding a moped, so okay, tell your friends, find out. If you have a turbo Iron Duke, you're the guy. I've wanted to boost what I have, but for road racing and rear wheel horsepower, let's swap to a bigger motor rather than the complexity of turbo. Does your 331 make 550 wheel horsepower already? I would think that if it does, I would think that that would be a really good road race car or road race power plant in a Mustang. Alpha N to the rescue. The tuning doesn't. The tuning can make the camshaft do what the camshaft can do, but at a point, it's not tuning that's limiting it. It's actually what the camshaft is doing. I had a Pontiac Fiero with an Iron Duke, been okay. With a quad 4, yeah, it would have been fantastic. Opinion on supercharger, lowish boost, 10 pounds or less on LS3 F35 cam. Too much overlap for boost? No, you don't have to worry about that with a. I don't know what supercharger you're thinking about running, but that's a really big camshaft. But it'd be really good for a a centrifugal blower. It should be good for any of the blowers. It'll be fine. I don't know if will that cam fit with a 111 LSA and a 235 intake duration. I don't know. Do you have a stock LS3 or does it have enough piston to valve clearance for that? I read somewhere that Dodge is going to stop making V8s and start producing inline 6 cylinders. I heard the same thing. I think that they are going away from the Hemi. So is boosting the engine you already have better than an engine swap? 71% saying yes and 29% saying no. These Aussie thumbnails are great. Had me fooled when I see bear thumbnails upside down. This I know when I load it on from my computer, we've been having problems with the computer. I actually have to send that photo to my phone, flip it on my phone, resave it, flip it again, and then send it back, and then it goes on there correctly. I don't know what the deal is. What are your opinions on the people welding LS fork heads together? I've watched a couple of those videos. The thing that it's a good idea from an engineering standpoint, meaning that the head flows a lot better, obviously, than a stock 300 head does. But the problem is that welding the heads together isn't something that's really simple to do to make it right. The ones that I've seen have been a little hacked together, and they might run, but and the head is definitely better. But that's not a path that I would go down. I don't know about welding it and making it right. Todd, what's going on? I have an E90 with an N52, can't reliably boost, so the swap is necessary. Why can't you swap or boost the N52? Have you ever used a turbo connected to one side of the V8? I have. I tried that on a big block Chevy, and it didn't work. It would only make about 1.5 pounds or so on the setup that I tried. I want to try it again on another application, and Saab did it back in the day. They had an asymmetrical turbo on their little V6, and they were using boost from just one side. So it's definitely possible if you size the turbo correctly. 71% voting yes, must be all Viper owners. I don't think so. I think that boosting what you have is really cool. Or even just modifying it. Like, it doesn't have to be like if I had I have one now, and I've had others. If you have an inline 6-cylinder Z, putting side drafts on it is really cool. I say that because I had side drafts on mine. I wish that I had a turbo on it, and another one that I have will have a turbo on it. But still, that's different. It's different and cool. I like to go through all the engines and figure out how to make them work and how they respond. I have a 399 small block Chevy, 10.7 to 1, 18-degree heads, running 89 octane. Could you give a thought? How many pounds of boost with a supercharger you think it might be able to run with 93 octane? I don't think you don't think of it in terms of boost. You have to think of it in terms of other stuff. You have to think of it in terms of what supercharger you're using, what's the temperature going to be at that boost, what's the detonation threshold, how can I help improve that? Can I run better fuel? Can I run? You're definitely gonna have to run less timing. Can I put maybe different head gaskets on there that could lower the compression? Can I polish the chambers? Is there anything else that I can do? The nice thing is with that combination, you're probably starting out at a pretty fair bit of power, assuming that the 18-degree heads that you have on there are working fairly well. So you don't need to run a lot of boost to get pretty big gains. My 220 foot-pound, 172 horsepower Iron Duke was a poor choice. I'm sure that that's not directed at me, because I don't think that that's the case on an Iron Duke. Do you gap the second ring the same as the top ring? I do. Some of them gap them differently. I've seen manufacturers tell you to put more gap in the top ring and less in the second ring, and I've also seen them tell you to do the opposite. In my opinion, I think that the top ring gets more heat. So, but you know, when I do the big bang stuff, because it's something from a wrecking yard that I don't really care about, both the rings get roughly the same gap. LS1 to my 280Z, that's a good combination. Swap the 260 flat top carbs to SU carbs on a naturally aspirated one, if that's what you're talking about, yeah, that's a good. The earlier SU carbs are better than the trash can carburetors on the 260s. I just don't know. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole to find out if the trash can carbs on the 260, if they flow more, or if they have different, metering on them to maybe provide more fuel if we were to run that in front of a turbo. Went from 63 kilowatts to 171 kilowatts. That's a big change. That's L67 V6. The L67 is, as we've seen, is a good motor and responds very well. I watched the gentleman from Australia that's drag racing it. He just took it out to the drag strip recently, and ran his personal best with it. So it's pretty cool. And he's got a supercharger on it that's pulleyed up, and then he has one of the chili bombs, the chili bomb air to water intercooler, because he's got some sort of manifold deal that allows the boost to come out and then go through the intercooler and then come back into the manifold. And so, he's running it intercooled, and it worked fairly well. Yes, happy Father's Day, everyone. 95 Falcon XR6, a common swap to put a Bear in a later XR6 turbo. It's much more difficult to lift an engine out than both the turbo and intercooler on. I agree. The turbo stuff is not that hard. And like when we had the 5-liter Mustang, obviously this is before LS even existed, but putting a blower on there was very easy. The most difficult part about putting the Vortec on there was knocking a hole in the pan. But they made it so easy, although it was a little sketchy back then. You would knock a hole in the pan with the punch that they gave you, and then thread that in, because when you knock the hole in the pan with the punch, it would like separate the pieces out, and then that gave you enough grab for the threads, and then you could put your drain in there. And now obviously they have, and I think that the guys from ATI from Procharger actually came out with it first. They had blowers that didn't require oil feeds and drains on them, which is a really good idea. 454. I was reading about one of them. Is a 232 244 cam, twin 67s, boosted third gen. If is it a 408 LS or is it a 408 small block? I don't really know what it is. Oh, 862 head, so it's got to be an LS. A 230 airflow head is going to flow a lot more and could make a lot more power than an 862, especially on a 408. But ultimately, the limit of your power are the turbos that you picked. So the turbos, if you can get everything out of the turbos with that combination, which I think you would be able to, the head upgrade is not going to do much for you. You're probably going to need more turbo if you're topping those out. 6.2 liter swap in your Lexus is lots of people doing that. I'm not specifically the 6.2, but an LS swap. Do you think for somebody who wanted to make 450 horsepower, something like a Fox Body 302 with boost? I would do boost on a Fox Body before I would do a Coyote swap for that power level. WAP block, hand-ported head, stainless valve, springs, MHS stage 2 cam, 96 pistons, ARP, everything, 7 pounds of boost on a Vortec. That all sounds like it will work. But he just blew out an 08 M3 with an S65. I think it would be worth looking into a swap and what you recommend. I like those cars, but couldn't you just put another BMW engine in there with a turbo? Or an LS swap probably would be cheaper ultimately. Noodles, happy Father's Day. Nitrous works really good. I have videos up on spraying it with a truck manifold. I wouldn't go with a lot. and they don't flow liquid well. But if you're running 100 shot on it, it works fine. Matthew, as a teenager wanting to build a Jeep with a 4-liter high output with boost, what are your suggestions and engine modifications? I would put ring gap in it, head studs, because I'm pretty sure ARP makes head studs for that Jeep. They should, because there's lots of people boosting them. Camshaft and springs will always help with a lot more power. But even if you just put boost to it, 375 to 400 horsepower, probably going to need a camshaft with it, and then boost. Is it cut to 7? Okay, your 18-degree heads flow 404. Yeah, that's a lot. 12 R1, yes, and a 6-speed or aluminum 5.3 is good. The new edge should finally be repaired in a week or two after all these months. It took a lot of work and headache. Hybrid intercooler setup. Oh, Scotty from Street Machine. That's what it is. Yeah, that's pretty cool because the car looks like inside. It looks like a real daily driver kind of car, not a semi stripped out race car. What is the? I think I'm behind. I haven't ever tried a Predator carb. Biggest engine and the lightest car was always a good combination. Was a typical horsepower gain from a vacuum dry sump. A dry sump is going to be more than a vacuum pump. Want to twin charge my 05 Monte Carlo. The thing that you're worried about is not the power for that motor. It's the drivetrain, unfortunately. Tom, I have not gotten a hold of Julius. Thanks for the reminder. I need to call him because the camshaft is done for it. The custom cam that I had done is done. Why not do a Ford engine, the RX-7? Twin turbo, an SB2 or an RO2 NASCAR motor. I don't have either one of those. And again, those were not designed for boost. I don't know about the ring packages and stuff in those things. Ever think of boosting a GM 2.8 liter 60-degree V6? That would be cool. I do see lots of those in the junkyard. I've done a 3100. And I think that is a 3100 a 60-degree? The major problem with the Iron Duke, you cannot find any roller camcorders. Limits what you can do. There's a blew-through mud truck on here using a Predator carburetor. Why am I seeing people asking the same question over and over? Jeffrey, I recently acquired a standard bore 1971 429 Super Cobra Jet short block. Very cool. Be ashamed to just hot rod this thing. Anyone know a contact that needs one for restoration? I wanted to run one of those, and what I needed was the Super Cobra Jet heads because that's the hard part to get, or the expensive part. Stock Vortec 350. What upgrades you recommend for boost? I want to stay with hydraulic roller cam. Well, there's lots of aftermarket hydraulic roller cams. The Vortec head usually needs springs to put any kind of camshaft in it. I don't know about the fuel injection on those, although I'm told that there are people online that are boosting those with that factory Spider fuel injection stuff. I just have never done it. Most GM motors are not designed for boost. The LS certainly wasn't, and look how well it responds. Matthew, run 375 to 400 horsepower on a turbo spool quick enough that it's usable off-road. What about turbo size? PSI. The PSI is not going to affect the response rate. What cam? I don't remember now what your combination was. The 2.2 stuff hasn't been run yet. I haven't even put it together yet. LQ4 truck Norris hit the road today. I have to get my wideband installed. I pulled 5 degrees of timing out just to make for a test drive. Handles pulled timing during initial fuel mapping. That's the way that we start everything, Mikey, is when we're running stuff on the engine dyno and we have a new combination that we're putting on there. We take all the timing out of it, like on LS stuff. We'll start out at 23 degrees or something like that, and even less down low, but 23, let's say, at the power peak. And so it might have 13 or 14 down low. And then we work on the air fuel to make sure that everything's working the way that it should. And once we get the air fuel in a realistic and make the map look decent, then we start worrying about timing. As soon as we know that it has on an NA motor that it has 12.5 to 1 or something like that, then we start adding timing and see what happens. And we do that in 1 or 2 degree increments. Have you ever done any testing with Crane Stage 3 road racing cams on B-Series engines? I thought that if I'm looking back that we have tested the Stage 1s, and I know we've tested the Stage 2s. I think I've tested the Stage 3s. I don't know specifically about a road racing cam. I just remember them calling them Stage 1s and 2s and 3s. And this was a lot of years ago when I did the Honda books, when I was doing a lot of B-Series stuff. So this is 10 plus years ago. Oh, so that's a drag pack Supercharger jet, even better. Richard, I always want to see you run a 4.8 to 7,000 RPM. We've done that a lot. But what kind of springs do you need to rev it that high? You can rev it that high with stock springs. We've run factory stuff. It'll rev to that RPM a lot of times, but it's not going to make power there. Otherwise, we put the 26 918s normally, like a single beehive spring, that kind of deal. Brian Tooley has new beehive springs out that they just came out with, and almost all of the dual springs will easily go there. But a lot of it also, and 7,000 RPM is nothing. That's easy for almost every combination, every kind of spring combination. Thinking of putting a single turbo on my 66 Mustang, it works really good. I mean, it's the cool thing about boost is like the amount of gain that you get. If you put a camshaft in, you may or may not be impressed by it. Like in an LS, it feels good, but a lot of times, as we've seen in all these dyno results, a lot of times the gains that you get down low are not significant. So when you step on the gas, you're like, it feels the same. Then it gets into the happy point and starts pulling hard on the big end. The problem is that doesn't feel fantastic like as soon as you get in the gas. Putting a big motor in, going from a 4.8 to a 6.0, you can feel that immediately. And that's the thing with a blower, and especially a turbo. If you put a turbo on there and just add 7 or 8 pounds to it, it's going to feel dramatically different because it's going to be 50% better. And that's a really big jump. My Jeep has a TBI 2.5, has had 4.8 with Summit Stage 4. We would make the same power with boost on a 2.5. You know, we're not talking about making the same power with the original motor versus swapping into something bigger and more powerful. We're talking about just upgrading the motor that you have. Like I was talking about, if you have an Iron Duke and it was at 90 horsepower, and you now make 150 or 170 or 200 or whatever the number is, that's a big percentage gain. So it's a lot better than it was. And there's something to be said for that. That's good. It's not going to be like, 4 or 5 orders of magnitude like it would be if you put a turbo LS in. If that's the thing and power is your thing, obviously you know the direction that you want to go. This is just a different deal. That's why I do things like the 3800 and the 4200, and why I want to do an Iron Duke. I'm kind of set on trying at least one of those on the dyno. And the same thing with the North Star. I don't particularly care about going down the rabbit hole with the North Star and porting heads and have cams done for them. I don't care about any of that, but I would like to run one on the dyno and then just run boost to it. Back to knock detention, what is the JNS stuff about? I'm hoping that we're going to test that and see what happens. 4-layer high output, you suggested ring gap springs, camshaft, head studs, and boost with a GT35 with an air-to-air intercore work. Yeah, all of that is good. And on a 4-liter, I think probably if you're not trying to make a whole bunch of power, then a 3076. Otherwise, a 3582 would be fine. 3582 is going to be the 5 and maybe 600. Probably not on a 4-liter, but something like that. LS thumper cam dyno by any chance? I don't have any of those cams. Hash, thank you very much. I voted no on the poll because 350 in my S10 is barely alive and a 700 R46. New engine, either 350 or LS is necessary. And that's good. You have to do the thing for your application that works best. And that's what this is. A lot of times the decision that, when guys say, well, I could make a lot more power for the same or even less money than I could ever with the one that I have. The problem is a lot of us don't have an extra $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000, whatever it costs to complete it, to get it to this level. To get it to the 1,000 horsepower level is shelling out a big chunk of change. But the motor that we have, we can put a throttle body on it and save up, and then put a header on it and then save up, and put a camshaft and springs, because we've got to do both those at the same time, or save up and get the turbo and then get the wastegate and then get the exhaust manifold. And we could do that a little bit at a time. So a lot of times it's just a function of when we could have the amount of money that it would take to do the modifications that we need to do. I always like to point out that the test on the most powerful factory small block, the 71 Bot 351, works my fellow Chevy boys to no end. I still want to do a 6-pack, a Dodge 6-pack, and honestly, I think that the 68 4-barrel 340 probably made more power than that, because it had a bigger camshaft than the 346-pack did. The 346-pack gets all of the press because it's the darling. The other one is I'm not sure that, like, if I was to test small blocks, is a Pontiac 400 a small block? I know the Pontiac guys are just going to say, oh, that's dumb, that's Chevy stuff. Pontiac never made a big block and a small block. But if somebody talks to me about a 455 Pontiac, that's a big block. I know that they're going to yell at me and say, no, it's the same block, it doesn't matter. It does to me. A 455 Pontiac is in the same group as a 455 Olds and a 455 Buick and a 454 Chevy and a 429 or 464. To me, all of that for me, I group that all in mostly because of displacement. A 350 or a 302 or a 327, even a 360, like on the Dodge side, that's all small block stuff. 351 Cleveland, same thing. Oh, I get guys that tell me that all the time. Oh, the Cleveland that's a mid block, or that's actually a big block, or because it bolts onto this transmission rotor. I'm like, look, a 302, 289, 260, 351 Windsor, those are all small blocks. A 351 Cleveland is the same displacement as a 351 Windsor. That's a small block to me. That works as a small block. Let's get back to Pontiacs. 350 and 326 and all the stuff below that, obviously small block territory, right? What about the 400? Chevy made a small block 400. So that's a small block. That's part of that engine family. The Pontiac also made a 400. And not only did they make a 400, they made 400s that actually made pretty good power. So Would I include the 400 Pontiac in my? I should, just because it's going to make everybody mad. And then it could be possibly the most. It's definitely going to make them more torque than any of the other motors, because none of the 400 Chevys made any power. None of the stock ones did, so they weren't never performance applications. Pontiac did have a 400, and it made good power, and other manufacturers did too. So like the 401s that are AMC and the 360, and those all need to be looked at too. So are there other ones that could dethrone the Boss 351 as the top dog? And if I did that 400 and started including 400s in the small block category, is that going to throw people off and make them go crazy? I think it would. Are there any advantages to a Cleveland block over a Windsor block? Some guys talk about the bearing sizes, but would a Gen 7 8.1N top end swap to a Gen 6 7.4? Or would you disagree with that? I don't. I haven't seen somebody do that. I've seen somebody go the other way, where they put not necessarily Gen 6, but the earlier big block Chevy stuff on the 8.1 and made that work. I don't know if it'll go the other way, and I wouldn't ever do that unless it was really, really easy and it bolted directly right on, because the amount of aggravation and fabrication that you might have to go through to make that work. There are so many good big block Chevy heads that it just doesn't make sense. I've never dynoed a Cosworth Vega. No, I've seen plenty of them in person, and they're really, really cool, but I've never run one. Dodge Shadow 3. See again, we got 383s that are joining the mix. But to me, the 383 Mopar is a big block, but that's just the way that I think about it. Cleveland's have a different deck than a Windsor. Yeah, it's a 9.2 and a 9.5. So, Eric, you consider all the Pontiacs, even 300-inch ones, as big blocks? 351 Windsor with Cleveland heads. That's done a lot. Just uploaded. Data advisor performance totally streetable, 800 horsepower, 87 octane big block Chevy. Totally streetable. Is it a naturally aspirated one? I think it has to be, right? Mopar A's are small and Mopar B's are big. They had Pontiac. I don't know about the short and tall decks. Maybe on the 301s or something they were like that, and the 303s. But they also had the crank sizes, I think, were different on them. Because I know I have a 347, which a lot of people don't even know that Pontiac made a 347, but they did. And it was not only did they make a 347, but the 347 was offered with the tri-power. Happy Father's Day to everyone. Is the Honda rod on a small block worth the hassle, stroker or not? And are the bearings for them still widely? The bearings are definitely widely available, and it's a fairly common thing to do for racing applications, but I wouldn't ever do it on any sort of street motor unless the rods that I was buying like mandated that, but otherwise I wouldn't do that. It's something that we would do on Engine Master stuff to try to get that last little bit, but it's not a big thing. It's a little thing. Same. Racer D said that the Cosworth Vega used the same block as the normal 4-cylinder Vega. Since the AMC 390 and 401s, that's the other one I was thinking of, the 390, not the 360 also, but are the same size block as the 290, 304, 343, 360. So they're also small blocks. That's what we were just talking about. So should a 401, and how far do we keep going? So a 400, yes. A 401, a 383 Mopar, no. Or a 400 Mopar. LS swap. There are swap kits for my purpose or turbo 4-liter 6-cylinder. It depends on what you're looking for. An LS, if you want 400 horsepower, an LS will do that with just a cam. Any LS will do that with just a cam. So it will be a lot easier to do that. Although, do you want to run it carbureted or like, I don't know what there are other things to consider. If you're running a fuel injected, are you going to have to run a standalone management system and all that? That gets expensive. An XR4 Ti with a newer 2.3-liter EcoBoost. That would be a really good combination. Because I really like those cars. I'm a big fan. I remember there was a guy at the Silver State that had one. He goes, yeah, we're running like, it was 20 something pounds of boost. I'm like, wow, what did you do? Like, what did you do to the injectors and the intercooler and how did you get it programmed? And, what did you do to the block? What kind of, I'm throwing out all these things, what head studs, all that stuff. He goes, oh, we just turned it up. I'm like, so you still have all the other stuff is stock? Yeah. I said, well, what about the fuel pump and what about the injectors? Yeah, it's all stock, man. It's 20 pounds. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. You brought a trailer, right? No. I said, okay, well, you'll be borrowing one. And he did. He blew it up, I don't know, 2 miles in or something. A chuckle that you mentioned the Pontiac. I recently purchased a 69 428 HO. Nice. With the original exhaust manifolds. It'll be going in my brother's 72 SJ Grand Prix. I like the Grand Prix too. I had a friend of mine had one 73 or 74 that had a 455 in it. And it was pretty fast. You build a 427 small block by offset grinding to a 395 for Honda rods and have no clearance problems. Only place the rod bolt will hit by the oil filter. I don't ever see any Rover V8s like that. If you're talking about the 215, I haven't seen any of those in the wrecking yard. The Cosworth Sierra even cooler, which obviously we didn't get that version, but an Oddfire 3600 Buick. How about the 4.1 liter? I think that did they put those in Citations or something? Oddfire 3800. Yeah, the 3600. That I didn't recognize that. And it was a HT 4100. Yeah, there you go. Oliver's in the house. Happy Father's Day. Oh, they were in Cadillacs too. They were 4100s though, right? And they had the GT40 looking tubular kind of intake manifolds on them, I think, on the Cadillacs. So if you if you bring it down to a 395 stroke, then that's going to reduce the displacement, right? 5.3 probably with fuel injection, straight pull out from a truck with mods for 400 horsepower. That's just a cam and springs. That's easy. Matthew, if you're going to do a swap, then get all of it. Get the engine and trans and harness and all that stuff. Some guys do complete takeouts like that, and you can get those. And then for programming, look over at Sloppy Mechanics. Matt has stuff that you can tunes that he'll just give you in the cabinet, in the tune cabinet, for whatever kind of camshaft you want to put in there. It will be really, really close. The Lada. I haven't ever seen one of those in the junkyard. How's our poll doing? Down to 68%. Is boosting the engine you already have better than an engine swap? Still at 68% saying yes and 32% saying no. Built a 4.9 CFI for a customer's caddy and it turned out pretty good. Pleasantly surprised with it being a larger HT 4100. Did you have to do anything to the trans on that, Oliver? Can you put an LS4 in rear-wheel drive cars? I guess you could, but I know that the accessories are shorter, and something's going on with the crankshaft in those too, right? Isn't the flange on the crank different? And the bell housing also is different. So I don't know what transmission you're going to use for that bell housing. Maybe the bell housing is the same as, can somebody help me here? Is the bell housing the same as the 3800 V6? I don't know that it is. Oh, okay, you built the trans, yeah, higher stall conversion. I was wondering about it. If you were making, you would be making more power even if you just made it bigger. Jeremy, your small block Ford combination that you're talking about, the limitation is the TorqueStorm supercharger itself. The TorqueStorm supercharger is like a 700 to 750 realistic horsepower kind of supercharger. $289 302 small block Ford turbo single setup 10 pounds. I don't base it on pounds, base it on what kind of power output you want. So whatever you're starting with, if you want a 700 horsepower motor, then use a GT45 clone. If you want more than that, then go to an S475 or something. Can I boost a motor that's already at 11 to 1? Yes, you can. We've done that a lot. LS1s are nearly that. I mean, LS3s are nearly that. And we do that all the time. And especially with the 85 and an intercooler, it works good. The LS4 does have that V6 bolt pattern. So that you could use if you put it in a rear-wheel drive application, you could use the 5-speed from the Camaro or the Firebird. Ever thought about using high pressure air to help rotate the balancer or flywheel? So you want to paddle wheel the engine? Racer, that's interesting that they rate that same rod at 500 horsepower in the V8 and 900 horsepower in the 4-cylinder. And the 900 horsepower on the 4-cylinders are going to have much more power per cylinder, and it's going to be at a much higher engine speed. Biggest issue with the LS4 is the starter mounting. There's none on the block. Oil pans with starter mounts are available. Okay. 2001 4.3 liter V6 with a Victor Jr. How did you put a Victor Jr. on a 4.3 liter? I didn't even know that they made a what 4.3 liter is it? Is it a Chevy? What size carburetor do you recommend? I don't know what the rest of the combination is, and I don't know how you had a Victor Jr. for that motor because I didn't know that they made one. But you size the carburetor for the power output, not for the intake manifold. LS4 King, yeah, has a starter on the oil pan. Jonathan, you have a 408 with 88 millimeter turbo. That's lots. I have a CSU 850 carb. It's non-E85. What fuel will be best to run? I'm hoping to get 1,000 horsepower with it. C16 will work fine. And I know that they'll tell you that you don't need an intercooler with a blow-through application, but it will help. The charge temperature will be lower going through the carburetor. A Chevette with a 2.8. I remember the guys doing the V6 swaps in those. I say no because I drive a 3.8 liter S6 Mustang. I'm sure you're talking about the poll, right? So we're going to close out our poll with 173 votes. Thank you, guys. 68% saying yes, that boosting the engine that you already have is preferable to doing an engine swap. A lot of times everybody says that when we talk about stuff, oh, you just need to put an LS in it. Like you just walk over and grab it from the wreck yard, just open the hood and just throw it from about 2 blocks away. It just drops in there and then drives away and comes and picks you up. It's for a lot of combinations, it's not anywhere near that easy. And it's not anywhere near as inexpensive as a lot of people will tell you that it is. So I know that I get that people sending me texts and information and stuff and telling me that, hey, look, I wanted to LS swap this thing. And I did. And it went down that route. But it's not as easy as everybody says it is. There's lots of things that I had to buy and replace and change and modify and make work before they even get into whatever they have to do to hook the wiring up and stuff to tune it. So it's not always like, everyone says it's so simple. And lots of guys have done it. But it's not as easy as taking a small block out and putting a small block in, because that's really easy. What's the max overbore size on an LS3? You can't go very much on an LS3 block. I don't think we go more than 4,000 or 5,000 unless you sleeve it. Most of the guys stroke those. Eric, take it easy, man. Wish I could find a Super 6 kit. Oh, you did some welding at the local high school. That's cool. Would you ever mess around with a 3.8 liter SX? I don't think I ever have. I can't remember what year was that, because I can't remember even running one of those on an engine dyno. Oh, mid 90s. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I have. Is that like the 3.8 liter that they ran in the Super Coupe? I think that is, right? Yeah, foreign automobiles. I love it when I walk when I have a walk out of the shop and they say, how much to throw an engine in? Costs very little. We can drop it from the hoist right here. Richard, I disassembled my L76 to gap the rings. The pistons got mixed up. Does it matter if the cylinder bores are honed? No, it's not going to make any difference. Revs like a diesel and probably makes diesel-like horsepower too. NASCAR V6 stuff. I don't have very much experience with that. We tried to do some stuff way back, but just ran into problems finding things because we wanted to do a little 4.3 liter deal. But and recently we tried to do a 4.3 liter with the Brodex headed stuff, but that's not really the NASCAR stuff. We had one of those come in. I think it might have been the last time I was down at West Tech. A guy had one of the old. His was a Busch Grand National motor, but it leaked everywhere and it had a bunch of problems with it. So I just asked the guy I got it from. It's an Elbrock Performer intake. Yeah, that makes more sense. That's the only one that they make for a 4.3 liter V6. Steven, what's up? Richard, which 3800 SC cam should I use? Looking for aggressive but streetable, be custom tuning, intercooled, Gen 5 blower, and a Fiero. Are you wanting to make a lot of power? You should look at the two cams that we ran on the 3800 that I did. We ran the smaller comp one, and then we ran the bigger camshaft from the guys at ZZP. I was surprised that the ZZP cam didn't give us more power given the change in duration. So if it was something I was driving around, I might just put that little comp cam in it or something that's one step up from that. And is it, so it'll be custom tuned, intercooled, Gen 5 blower. Well, since you're going to run the blower on, I don't know why I was thinking turbo. If you're going to run the blower on it, maybe that ZZP cam. It's designed to allow you to run theoretically better non-intercooled, but it works very well with an intercooler. Richard, do you think an Aussie X-Flow 254.6 head can fit on a 2.3 liter HSC? I don't know. I'd be the wrong guy to ask. I don't even know what the dimensions are in any of those. You want a 4-cylinder with Cleveland type head flow. Does that Aussie X-Flow head flow that much? Does it flow 275? Casey, I've had lots of guys ask that back when I was doing the 3800 stuff, if somebody has ever taken the 3.8 liter stuff and put it on a 4.2 liter short block, but I never got an answer from anybody. D-Sauce, your 430 Buick, you're putting a Kenny Bell on it. You don't have to worry about the crankshaft. We run 1,500 horsepower in cast crank stuff. So the crankshaft's not going to break or you're not going to hurt it with power from a Kenny Bell. Cody, yes, I've seen the Ford 6-cylinder with the LS heads. We talked about that earlier in the chat. And also, I've seen the one that the guy did with the Boss heads, and that was actually better. At least the welding and stuff that he did on the Boss heads was much better than the one that I watched on the LS stuff. Can you get 400 horsepower from an LS4? Yeah, the intake's not good, but the rest of it is very easy. Two more minutes. Hopefully everybody had a good Father's Day today. The camshaft I'm putting in the 3800 is unfortunately for me, is low lobe lift. So we're having to augment that with 1.9 rockers. I had a 94 Super Coupe. It would run 140 miles an hour. Yeah, at the time, back then, Ford actually had 4 motors or 4 cars that would go over 140 miles an hour. One of them was the Mustang, one of them was the Super Coupe, and the other one, oddly enough, was the, at least this is what they were saying, was the Ford Probe would go that fast. Scott, your video on 400 impressed me. I'm rethinking my build of a 351 Ford Cleveland. That's a good motor. Are you willing to give up some of your build recipes, drag racing application? All of the information on what we put in there is there. I mean, there's no secrets to it. The Sasquatches are stealing tractors. I've been watching, before I go, has anybody else been watching the Skinwalker Ranch stuff on I think it's on the History Channel. I think it's been going on for a couple of seasons now. I just started watching it because I've read about it and watched a lot of videos on it. So I kind of wanted to see what they were doing to find out if they were finding any cool information. What tuner would be good but economical option for 500-600 horsepower 3 twin turbo? I don't know where you are or who you want tuning. I don't ever do any like chassis tuning or street tuning. Foreign, I think that Calvin told me, I thought he told me that the 4-cylinder and the 5-cylinder might have different sump pans on them. Obviously, they're not going to bolt onto the 6-cylinder, but I think that they are different. 2-bolt main 454 can handle any boost. Yes, lots and lots of boost. They'll handle lots of power. Lots and lots of power. Okay, who's going to have the last question? I think that they do have rear sumps. I'll send Calvin a message and ask him. On Pensacola, Florida, meant something like a Holley system. I only ever tune with the Holley and the Fast and the MS3 Pro, but lots of guys do stuff in cars with HP tuners and those things. Those work too. It's not, you know, like I said, if you look at the stuff that Matt's doing over at Sloppy, they have lots and lots of stuff running factory ECUs and making, you know, a bajillion horsepower and doing it fairly easy. His no BS me combo works really well. Okay, Noodles, you're going to be the last one to do different rocker ratios affect duration or only dynamic lift. They affect lift, obviously, and they do, if you map it out, they will affect duration, but it's not dramatic. It's only 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees or so that they'll change it. So it's not, you know, it's not changing the cam kind of thing. It can change the lift a bit depending on what ratio you're going to and from. But normally, if you change it from a 1.5 to a 1.6, it's about 1.5 degrees or between 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees, I think is what Billy was telling me. Okay, guys, thank you all for showing up. Oliver, give me a call sometime and let's work out the L28 deal so we can get that going. I did this weekend, like I said, picked up a Pontiac, which is kind of cool. So I have that, and the SC never shut down, just ran out of power. That's what I thought. I thought that they would bet. I know that if I remember right, they may have put a limiter on later on or something, but I remember them, the ones that they were doing the road tests on would actually go that fast. Recently saw a Calvin video where he was talking about it. Yeah, he does good stuff over there. Him and his dad are good. They're good people. Okay, guys, thank you all for showing up. I will see you all tomorrow. And boom, end stream. And you will no longer be live. And boom, we're out.